Okay, I think we're gonna go ahead and start. Thank you all so much for being here. So my name is Kessa, and I'm a Green Corps member, and I work with Minnetonka on energy and renewable energy and electrification stuff. So really glad that you all are here tonight, and it's my pleasure to introduce Jukka Kukkonen. So he is the Chief Electric Vehicle Educator and Strategist for Shift to Electric. He's an automotive engineer by training and a former Ford area manager. He's worked with the electric vehicle market for over a dozen years, and he also teaches electric vehicle market and technologies at the University of St. Thomas. So if you're interested in more information on Shift to Electric, you can visit the website. It's just www.shift2electric with the number 2. And then also want to mention that this presentation is sponsored by clean energy advocacy organization Fresh Energy. So let's give Jukka a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Glad to be here tonight talking with you about electric vehicles. So that's great, and we're almost out of seats here, so that's a nice turnout. Good job in advertising and stuff, and thanks for all of you joining us tonight here. So usually when I open my mouth, people pick up my Wisconsin accent quite fast. And then I just have to correct people. I was like, yeah, you're right with the direction, but you have to go a little further east. So I'm originally from Finland. That's where I grew up. I grew up in a small farm in the eastern side of Finland, about maybe 50 miles from Russian border. So that's where I grew up. I had a great childhood there, and I was very interested in technology from early age, and first trained to become a mechanic, and then trained to become an engineer, automotive engineer, and went to work for Ford Motor Company in Finland. And after working there for some time, I was like, I don't see this automotive industry doing too much for making things better. They were just making very gradual improvements on stuff, and like, this is not going anywhere. I'd better do something else. So I left Ford, went into consulting and training, met my wife through that way, and of course she's from here. So then we had to flip a coin if she's gonna move to Finland or if I'm gonna move to here, and I don't know who won or lost in this game, but I've been here for over 20 years, so that's how I ended up in Minnesota here, and I've liked it here. It's a great to be here. Well, in our family we try to take best of both worlds, so in summertime we go for several weeks in Finland to enjoy the Finland too, so that way we can do that too. So I, of course, being here, I followed what's happening in the automotive industry, and I started to see that EV technology was maturing in a way that it will become a viable option for us. And I was like, okay, I'd better start to look into this and work a little bit more on that. And 2010, I started my own company, Shift to Electric. At that time, it was called Plug-in Connect, but anyways. So I've worked since 2010 with EVs, and that has been very fun. So a couple of things about what I do here. So I do EV market and business development through my own company. So I work with utility companies and auto dealers and manufacturers and so forth, helping them to figure out what's their role in the marketplace. I also work in a charging infrastructure side, figuring out what's the best ways to provide charging, for example, for multi-housing and apartment buildings, so condos and apartment buildings. If you're interested in that, you can go to mudcharging.com. There's some information about how you could consider that area. The same with the workplace charging. You can find more information about workplacecharging.com there. If you are in a workplace and you would like them to provide charging infrastructure, check out the website. We have nationwide Empower program right now going. So they provide actually free of charge consulting on how to help the companies to put the workplace charging setups together. So if that's interest, check it out. It's a good program. Here in Twin Cities, we have a Minnesota Clean Cities Coalition who is coordinating that for us there. I started Minnesota EV Owners Group in 2012. We had 55 people in our first meeting at that time, and now we have over 3,800 members. So it has grown pretty fast, as we know, what is happening in the market. And then I'm also EV market expert at Fresh Energy, and I teach EV market and technologies at the University of St. Thomas. So that's fun thing. Those are fun things. So since I'm an automotive engineer, I start from technology. I always start from technology perspective, all of this stuff, and we have to look at the internal combustion engine first. If we think about why are we even talking about electric vehicles, this slide is kind of answering that question. Internal combustion engine is an old invention. We have used it for over 100 years now. It has worked pretty well, but it has a little bit of limitations too when you look at it. So what we try to do with the internal combustion engine is we try to convert the energy that is in chemical form, in gasoline, and convert it into moving force to move our car. And we are doing that by using small explosions. And small explosions might be a fun thing to do many things, but they're never the most energy efficient way to do anything, if you think about it from that perspective. And that's why internal combustion engines are 15 to 25% efficient. So they are very inefficient machines. And there's a lot of losses in the process. Someone has actually said that internal combustion engines are excellent heaters, and as a side product, we get some propulsion power out of them too, which is pretty good description of how they operate. And of course, they're very complicated machines too. So that's the challenge. And if someone would right now invent this great thing, internal combustion engine, and come and tell you that, hey, I made this great invention, internal combustion engine, we can start to drive our vehicles with this one. And you're like, okay, so how efficient is it? Oh, it's 15 to 25% efficient. I'm like, why would I use that? No one would ever consider even starting using that at this point, but because we have used it and we have the infrastructure for it, that's why we are still hanging to that a little bit. Comparison then, electric motors. That's a picture of a modern electric motor. You have one moving part there, rotor, and that's it. So it's much more simple. It's 85 to 95% efficient. So it's 4 times more efficient than traditional internal combustion engine. Huge difference, just huge difference. And that's why we are talking about the EVs. That's why we are moving to EVs, because any technology that is 4 times better than the older technology will take over sooner or later. So I had enough, my opening slide I had there, welcome to the EV decade. That's why I'm talking about the EV decade, because we are gonna move to EVs no matter what. It's kind of like, if you remember the discussion a few years ago when we were talking about incandescent lights and LED lights. And there were those people like, I'm never going to LEDs, ever. I'm gonna hold on to my incandescent lights forever. And now there's like, yeah, why would I? There's no reason, because they are 4 times more efficient. The same thing with transportation. If electric vehicle technology is 4 times more efficient, it'll definitely take over. All right, so you could say, all right, well, we have had most of this motor technology for decades too, so why haven't we moved earlier? Well, the answer to that, of course, is batteries. If you think about the batteries that we got first when we got the first mobile phones, you had a small handheld unit there, and then you had this big suitcase of batteries that you were hauling around. That's what the technology was at that time. Nowadays, it's a little different story. Much more batteries. So battery technology has improved so fast recent years that's why we are starting to see more EVs coming to market. And here's a graph that is from Bloomberg New Energy Finance, and this is true in many other ways. But they, in this graph, for example, showed that in 2010, the battery prices were over $1,000 per kilowatt hour. And then 2020, we're starting to be close to 100. Right now, we are about the 100 level per kilowatt hour. So if you, for example, take an example of this, what does this mean for vehicles? Take, for example, Volkswagen ID.4. That is a family size, small crossover that has 77 kilowatt hour, almost 80 kilowatt hour battery pack in it. And if you think about if Volkswagen would have built that car in 2010, it would have that time cost them just to build the battery over $80,000. So it's a little hard to sell a $40,000 car if your battery alone costs you $80,000. But now when the battery costs have come down and that battery costs you less than $10,000, maybe $8,000 to build, it starts to make much more sense. And that's why we are seeing very rapid developments in this one, because battery technology has come much more affordable in recent years. The other thing that we are also seeing, of course, is the shift to renewable energy in our production of electricity, which is good. So you can see here Xcel Energy's carbon emissions, how fast they have dropped from 2005 and still continue dropping. So our electric cars get cleaner every day, even if we don't do anything, because our grid is getting cleaner. Whereas with internal combustion engines, when the engines wear, they start to consume more, they become more polluting, and also our gasoline sources are getting dirtier all the time. So the trajectories are also very clear in that one when it comes to the pollution side. Talking about the emissions then and making the comparison here, here's one example of that. So if you look at the annual well-to-wheel car emissions by fuel type there, if you drive 12,000 miles, and we can just look at the CO2 emissions there. If you use traditional internal combustion engine vehicle, gasoline vehicle there, you might be producing 11,000 pounds of CO2. If you go to EVs, the number is only 4,000 pounds of CO2. And then, of course, you have an opportunity to charge it with renewables, and then it's much less emissions at that point. And then, interesting thing about this is if you look at that graph there, and this is coming from 2014, these numbers. And I just showed you how fast the CO2 numbers or emissions have come down from the grid in recent years. That EV number is not 4,000 anymore. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's 3,500, but it's less than what is showing there. So that's again just reminding us about that side. So what's happening in the EV market? What are we seeing right now here? And we are seeing decent growth, even though there has been a lot of headlines like, oh, no one is buying EVs anymore. Not so true. People are still buying EVs and they are still selling. So here's a graph, for example, for last couple of years, where we started in the US in 2020, like in 2%, and now we are reaching 10% last year. We're almost at 10% at the end of last year. I think December was, as a month, was over 12% in the US. So that's pretty good growth there, I would say. And in Minnesota, we have seen also very good growth in this 2020 to 2023-24 there. So if you look at the graph of the purple graph there, that tells the market share of new vehicles sold. So we are over 6% there right now with that. So if the US is 8 to 9 to 10, somewhere there, we are over 6%. So we're not that far back. I actually have some even more detailed pictures here about where we are. So in that one, if you look at the top lines there, it says market share. That is actually not market share that they are talking about there. It's a share of the whole fleet. So whole fleet right now in Minnesota, I think this was September last year, EVs were 1.67 or 1.7% of the total fleet. So not a big portion, but it's not the market share. Just be clear about that one. And somewhere in California, for example, is 8.6% already. So, and you can see there actually is annual market share there down there, as you can see 6.7 2023 at the end of September there. But if you look at the top right corner there, those are the top ones, but if we go into where Minnesota is, the 1.7, the only Midwest state that is ahead of us is Illinois, and it's 1.8% of the existing. So we have still a little bit to do and get past them Illinois, but otherwise we're doing pretty well in Midwest. We are above average. Very nice, as we need to be. So I would say we are leading. Illinois is just a little bit, but close there. And climate, you mean the cold weather or? Oh yeah. I'll come to that comparison very soon here. Not so much in that way. Here we can see Wisconsin is way behind us, 1.2%. Michigan is 1%. Hey, Michigan, how can they be that low? I don't know. Anyways, and then South Dakota and North Dakota are way lower there. Iowa less than 1%, South Dakota 0.6%, North Dakota is 0.4%, so a little bit behind us. Anyways, so those of you who already drive EVs, pat yourself in the back, you're doing this already. I forgot to ask, how many of you here drive electric vehicles already? All right, so look at these people. These are the people you want to talk to, because they know what this all is all about. That's always chat with the people who actually drive electric vehicles, because they have experience of it. How many of you have test-driven an EV? Okay, so pretty good number already for that one too. That's very good. So here we come to the examples of, for example, cold climate and what that has to do with anything. And I wanted to bring you some Finnish language there. Sähköautojen markkinaosuudet. Is that clear? Very good. All right, then that's great. Then I can just switch to Finnish and do the rest of this in Finnish, the presentation here. So I want to make a comparison to my country of origin, Finland, because Finland is actually a pretty good comparison for us here in Minnesota. Finland is about 1/3 bigger in geographically, the same population, so it's sparsely populated like us. They have actually centers a little bit more around the country, so it's people actually drive even longer distances in Finland than they do in Minnesota. And of course, Finland is somewhat colder than Minnesota is. The weather there is, the winters are longer and the summers are shorter. And there's plenty of snow, for example, this winter there, and they have had -40 degrees temperatures and stuff like that. So all the fun there. And if you look at what has happened in Finland, in 2020, they were, if you look at the red graph, it's the dotted graph, that should be red. But anyways, that graph is EVs, all EVs together there, and they were about 12% already in 2020. So they were a little ahead of US at that, where we are right now in the US. But if you look at the growth from there, they are over 60% right now in their market share of new vehicles sold in there. And that's just 3 years. That's how fast the change can happen when people actually realize that, yep, this is actually a better car. I should start driving electric. And that's what can happen. I don't think we'll see it that fast in the US. There seems to be quite a bit of inertia in the market, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't do it. So just to give you an example. At the same time, if you look at the gray graph that is coming down there, that's a gasoline cars. And they are below already full electric ones, and plug-in hybrids just getting past them too, so they are like only 30% now, where they used to be almost 70% just 3 years ago. Just give you an example. Sweden is actually ahead of this. They are a little bit faster even than Finland, and Norway, over 90% of the new vehicles sold there electric. So do EVs work in a cold climate? It seems to be so. So I don't think that's really a big issue. And long distances and all of that is not really an issue. I understand people are concerned, new technology and all of that, but in real life, when the people start driving, they're like, yep, this actually works. All right. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is what has happened globally with vehicle sales overall. That this is from Bloomberg New Energy Fund. If you look at that, 2017, the black bar was the highest internal combustion engine. And after that, it has started to drop. So internal combustion engines peaked in 2017. That's already 7 years ago. How many knew this? I don't think we hear too much about this, but this is what happened. And now the internal combustion engines sales are just coming down, and EV sales are increasing. And in some places it's increasing really fast, and somewhere a little slower, but that's what's happening. So just to be very clear, that trend line is very clear. That's a worldwide. Yeah, that's a worldwide. Yeah, definitely I would love to see this fast in the US too, but this is worldwide right now. The other thing, again, talking about the technology, I wanted to share with you, EPA does this automotive trends report every couple of years. And in the 2023 report that came out at the end of last year, they showed the graph for average fuel economy for new light-duty vehicles from 1975 to 2023. And they were like, hey, it has doubled from 13 miles per gallon to 26 miles per gallon. But that's from 1975. How many years is that? That's 50 years. That's not called progress. There's no improvement in that one, if you ask me. And if we go into the detail, if you look at that, it looks like there's a pretty good growth there at the end there. That looks very nice. And like, maybe the internal combustion can still be a little better, maybe. And they actually, in this trend line, if you go look at the report, the first 60 pages, they are just talking about how the turbocharging is in this many cars, and these kind of valve systems are used in internal combustion engine stuff, which I again know in and out, and it's totally useless information for me nowadays. But when you get to the page like 68, they actually show what is happening here at the end. So here's the same graph on that same report from 2010 to 2023, and the lower part there is the upper part is what that graph looked like. So you can see the darker dots there just going up to 26 miles per gallon there. But then the lower dots are what would have been this graph been without EVs there for battery electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, or fuel cells. Fuel cells are so minor that they don't have any impact on this one whatsoever. But if you look at that would have been a flat line there. The only thing that is improving it is EVs. So that's where we are. So practically internal combustion engines are stuck with 25, and it's a good example again how they are. And this actually even includes traditional hybrids, and still it hasn't been getting better. So traditional internal combustion engines are actually getting worse in that way. So that's that. All right. So if we think about this growth, and if we look at if we are meeting the targets that have been set, there will be 48 million electric vehicles on roads in 2030 in the US. It's a pretty big growth. It's not a small number to reach. So in 2021, we had 2.8 million electric vehicles on US roads. Right now, we are at 4.8 roughly, somewhere there. So decent growth. 2025, we should be in 15 million. Well, right now, if I look at the trend lines, I would say maybe 12 million. Just a rough idea. Who knows for sure, but somewhere there. But still, it's a very, very big growth there. And the interesting thing for you to understand here is that where does the charging happen, and I'll talk more about this very soon too, is that the amount of charging stations that are needed is also very big. But if you look at where they are going to be, the black portion is residential. They're going to be at our homes. That's where EV charging will happen mostly. And I'll come back to that later, but just gives a good visual here how this will happen. All right, so if you think about general public now, what are they thinking about EVs? Some of the recent surveys tell that 20% are strongly for EVs. They're like, yep, this is a good idea. We should do this. We should actually get an electric car whenever possible. And 60% are like, well, I don't know. Tell me more. I might be interested, but I'm not sure about this yet. And then 20% is strongly against EVs, which is true for anything you put on the table. 20% of the people are always strongly against whatever you are suggesting. And they're usually pretty vocal. They're like, why this? I don't understand. Yeah, exactly. But we can give them their time. They can come around whenever they feel like it. Because if 80% of the people will decide to go EVs, the last 20% will follow. There's no question about it. So, anyways, this means that people need more information, education and so forth. So that's good. Thank you for having me an opportunity today to talk with you about this. But I will have to say one thing about this. I found this interesting result of one study where they looked at the different interventions, how people have changed their mind about climate change. And I think EVs are somewhat comparable to that because it's a totally new concept that they might not be familiar with. So you can probably say this probably works pretty well the same way with EVs too. And if you look at education, only had an impact of 3.5%. So no matter what I say here, it means something. but it doesn't mean that much. I don't think that every one of you will go tomorrow and buy an EV, whatever, no matter what I say here. But if they get some feedback, the commitment, appeals, financial incentives, we have some of those. But social comparisons is the most important piece here. So when people get an opportunity to talk with someone else who has some experience about the topic, then the change starts to happen. And that's why I said earlier, talk with the EV owners, because they can tell what it's like to drive, own, and charge EVs here in Minnesota. And so that's that. All right. So when we started driving in our family EVs, that was 2012. We bought the Nissan Leaf 2012 and we're really happy about it. It was extremely great car at that point. The challenge was that it had full 73 miles of range. It worked great for my wife to drive to work and back, but we did not take it to Duluth, or not to mention to Chicago or anything like that. You didn't even consider that. Well, things have changed a little bit in recent years. In the last 12 years, if you look at that, from that era, it says the average distance or range for new EVs in 2012 was 76, and in 2023, we're talking about 270 miles. So it's totally different situation than what it was. And people have been worried about this range, like, I don't know, do EVs have enough range? Yep, that problem was true in 2012. In 2023, 2024, yeah, it's not the same problem anymore. I don't very often drive 100 miles a day. Very rarely do I drive 270 miles a day. I'm just trying to think, when is the last time I drove 270 miles a day? I have driven to Duluth and back, yeah, in some of these years. So I've gone there and driven back. But at those events, I've usually gone there and I've done something there and I've let the car to charge. So I've actually charged there and then I've come back. So I could have easily doubled my 270 miles range. So I could have driven 500 miles that day, no issues. So anyways, we have to remember that has changed a lot, and that's because the battery prices have come down, so the manufacturers can actually put bigger batteries in the cars and provide more range for the cars. Of course, when we think about, again, for what happens with the range in the cold temperatures, you get less range. So let's say you have a 1/3 less range because you have to heat the car and you have to drive through the snowstorm and cold air is denser and all of those good things. So yeah, it does impact that. So maybe I have only 200 miles of range. Again, how often do I drive 200 miles a day? Not too often. So not an issue from that perspective. But at the same time, when you have a car that has 73 miles of range, 2012, and you drop, in that case, half of it, then it starts to have a big impact on you. Again, things have changed in the last 10 years, just keeping that in mind. So you should all have now EV info list. If you didn't get one, I'm sure we have still some left there. So this is just a list of all the different vehicles that are available in the US right now. And this is your shopping tool. You just go and check out which cars you like the most and then go test drive them all. Have fun. Don't limit yourself too much. Have more fun. Drive 5 or 10 different cars because you have to choose what car works for you. Doesn't matter what I say here, you have to go and test drive it and see what is the car that you like the best. And I'm just giving you one pro tip here. The most important column in this paper is the third last column. If you look at that, 0 to 60 miles per hour acceleration. That is what you use to choose cars. The rest of this is just nice to know information. So that's how it works. Just keeping that in mind. And if you look at the EVs, the numbers are pretty nice. I mean, just the first page there. And if you look at those numbers, I can find 5.8 seconds per, but everything else is faster. So sorry, they're a little fast. So again, nothing beats cubic inches, as you know, except electric torque. So that's how it works nowadays. All right, there are also excellent deals on used EVs. So right now, very, very, very good deals. I just went into the cars.com today and just used their service there. You can look at the cars.com usually list mostly the cars that are at the dealerships, and they had 515 EVs in the 250-mile range from Twin Cities. That's a pretty decent number. And I'm sure their system doesn't even show all the EVs. I would much rather go there and when you pick up some of the cars, just go and use that car, make a model, and you'll probably have more numbers there based on that. I also looked at the other one, I say Facebook Marketplace is a good place to check out used EVs. They have a decent selection there. And today I just looked at the used Nissan Leafs and they start from $3,500. So yeah, there are some very, very good deals on those. Then I mentioned Kesa. I just stopped by coming here. I stopped at the GS Motors. And it's in Hopkins, not too far from here. And they sell only used EVs. So it's gsmotors.us, and you can stop there and go and test drive probably 6-7 different EVs there, used EVs, and figure out what works for you. And Pavel, who sells them there, is very knowledgeable and very great to work with. So definitely highly recommend talking with him about the EVs. Or then you can buy my old Tesla Model S. I had to put it there, of course, just to save some promotion here. 22,500, P85D, goes from 0 to 16, 3.2 seconds, if that's enough for you. Anyways, it's outside there for you to see. Anyone interested, let me know and I'll tell you more about it. So, that's that. But definitely, you don't have to buy a new one, you can buy used ones. They're very good vehicles out in the market. There have been a lot of discussion that's been saying that EVs work best for cities, but for rural America, I don't know if that's such a good choice. Well, I'm actually saying just the opposite. I'm saying that EVs make more sense for rural America than they do for the cities in many ways. First of all, rural households use much more funds to transportation. So EVs provide much bigger savings opportunity. This is actually a very important thing for people to understand, because if you drive an old big gas guzzler, you are using a lot of your funds into that, just powering that one, whereas if you drive the same thing with EV, much more affordable. Range has increased, we have talked about that, 270 miles, so it's not an issue for even in rural America. And usually when I talk with people from rural areas, I said, well, do you have more than two, or do you have 2 cars in your family? And they said, yeah, I have 5. I was like, all right, great. Then you're a very prime candidate for EVs, because you don't have to replace all the 5 EVs right now. You can just get one, just replace one with the EV, and then all of a sudden you will start to learn that you'll be driving that EV the most, because it's the most fun and the most affordable way to drive, and then you start to learn the thing. But it doesn't have to be that everything changes overnight. It's a gradual change. And people can just do one thing. And then if they are concerned about the range, they have still 4 other vehicles to choose from. If they want to drive longer distances, then I want to use EV for that. Access to gas fueling infrastructure is limited. In Twin Cities, you can throw a stone and you find a gas station somewhere, whereas in rural America, you might have to drive somewhere to power your car. Compare that to the EV, because you just come into home, you plug it in, and it charges. You don't have to go anywhere to charge it. Home charging is usually pretty easy to set up, because you usually have some space there. You usually have a easier access to electricity in your property, whereas in bigger cities, you might have much smaller lots. You have a much more restricted access to where electricity is and all of that, so it might be harder for you to set up a charging for yourself. There's also a federal home charging incentive that is max 30% up to $1,000 for homes, and it's only available for rural areas and low-income neighborhoods. So that's true too. New federal funding will increase the rural public charging infrastructure too, so we can see more of that. And then powering your vehicle with local electricity is a local economy's booster. In Minnesota, we are not getting oil anywhere here. Oil is coming from somewhere else. We are importing oil, we are exporting boatload of money to pay for that oil, and then we are burning it here and taking all the emissions here. How wise is that? It's not very wise, let me tell you that. And same applies in a smaller scale. If you think about the local economy, you're now importing gasoline into that local economy, and most of those funds actually leave the local economy when you pay that. Compared if you drive an EV, you're getting the electricity from your local utility company, co-op or municipal utility company. Much bigger portion of those funds stay in your local economy. And in addition to that, you already save money because you're paying less. So much bigger portion of the funds will stay in local economy. Always a local economy booster. And then of course there's nowadays more and more of these vehicle to load options. So you can use your EV as a battery, so you can pull power out of it. If you have a pickup truck like Ford F-150 Lightning, I think it has like 7 outlets in it. You can do whatever you want with it. And really, when I think about me living here in St. Paul, I can't really come up with single use for those kind of outlets. I could go somewhere and park and make coffee in my own coffee maker. It's just like some gimmicky thing. Nothing really. But if I live in farm, I can come up with 20 ideas right away that I could use that power in the farm. My brother has, I said I grew up in a farm, so my brother still keeps the farm. He, for example, he has a Kia EV6 that is a normal sedan, but it has this power output. I went there last summer, I was like, where's my brother? He's like, oh, he's pumping the new well empty there. I was like, where is it? Oh, it's in the middle of that field there. All right, well, I go there. He's there with his Kia EV6. He drove his Kia EV6 there. He plugged it into pump, so he's emptying the well there because he has to empty it a couple of times. That's how easy it was for him. Drive car there, drop the pump there, just pump the whole thing empty. Didn't have to do anything more than that. So again, great ways to do that. I mean, if you have Ford F-150 Lightning, you could even use welding equipment with that. So you have equipment that breaks somewhere in the field, which happens, of course, and then you can spring the unit there, just weld the thing back together, so you can get it back to your shop and fix it properly there. All right, how to charge an EV? So every car, well, it's not true anymore. I usually used to say every car comes with this level 1 cord set. Well, not all the EVs come with the level 1 cord set because people don't necessarily always use them, but it's very cheap to buy them if it doesn't come with one. You can pay like $200 to get one. But basically that one is just, has a plug that plugs in the car, and the other end plugs to any outlet, household outlet. And so you don't have to do anything more than that. As long as you have an outlet in your garage, you're good to go to start charging with it. We are just limited how much power we can pull out of that household outlet. So that works well if you drive 30 miles or less in a day with that car. If you drive, on average, more than 30 miles, then you should go with the level 2. But I'll give you an example. My in-laws, who live in Bloomington, they just bought brand new Tesla Model Y that has almost 300 or over 300 miles of range, somewhere there, around 300 miles of range. They just use the normal 120 outlet in their garage. And people are like, how can you do that? You have a so big battery, how can you do that? It's like, well, that's not an issue. They don't drive that much. They drive maybe 10, 15 miles a day. And even if someday they drive 50 miles, they can still let it charge for a couple more days after that. Because bigger battery, you have flexibility on how you use it. So it might be just fine for many people. So I know many people who have done this for years because they don't need anything more than that. If you consistently drive longer distances, then I would recommend putting level 2 charging stations. So the one on the left there is home charging station, the white one there. The other one is public charging station. I think we have a couple of public charging stations here up in this parking lot too. But home charging stations cost between $400 to $500, the basic ones. And then the installation cost is depending how close the breaker panel is where you want to have the charging station installed. If you have a breaker panel in your garage, it's a few $100 probably to do the installation. If your breaker panel is in the basement of your house, and then you have detached garage, then you have to do a little digging there, but that's just fun work. So that's how it is. You can also have your electrician to run a second line to your garage and get it done that way. It's not a big deal. They do that all the time. And then, of course, the fastest way to charge cars is using DC fast charging stations. But again, these will be used just in the highways when you do longer trips. But over 85% of the charging happens at home. That's what we need to remember. I use DC fast charging maybe once or twice a month. roughly. Not that often. Practically only times if I drive to Duluth or something like that. If I drive to St. Cloud, no, I don't need it. I can just charge at home enough because I have enough range for that trip. If I drive to Duluth, then I start to need the DC fast charging on the way. We used to have just the one units like that. Nowadays, the DC fast charging stations start to look like this. There's much more cords, so there's more options for people to choose there, and that's what we are starting to see. And usually, if it's a level in public areas, if it should, what I recommend is thinking about if some people are thinking about what kind of charging stations should be installed in a level in different public areas. If the dwell time is less than hours, if it's measured in hours, then level 2 charging station is fine. But if the dwell time is measured in minutes, then DC fast charging is right. So, for example, hotels where people go overnight, level 2s are the right thing for there. Or parks where people might be 3-4 hours, level 2. But if you go in the shopping center, if you go in the gas station, anything like that, then DC fast charging is the right option for there. So just a rough idea. All right. I don't know how much you have heard about the charging plug standards, but this is changing a little bit. So we have a different standard for level 2s and DC fast charging, but that used to be the one on the left there, J1772, used to be standard for every car except Tesla, and the next one there is the Tesla plug there. Well, guess what? Everybody's moving now to Tesla plug. So starting next year, actually manufacturers are all moving in the Tesla plug. So we're gonna go that way. And you can understand from the next picture why this is, because here you can see the J1772 CCS, which is a little bit bigger, and Tesla plug that can still do the same kind of DC fast charging is a little bit smaller. So that's why we are going into Tesla plug. It's much better solution. So right now, if you buy a new EV, don't worry about it because you'll get adapters for it. So there'll be adapters to be able to use it. But we used to have Tesla superchargers for long distance trips because those were the most prominent on highways, and then we had others. Now everybody can start to use supercharging stations. So it'll be much easier time going for longer trips, a much better charging infrastructure availability, starting actually today. Ford just started today opening up their systems to Tesla superchargers. And other manufacturers will follow, provide the plugs. And next year, they'll natively put the Tesla plugs there. So things are changing faster. And then, of course, it's not just about vehicles, the cars. There's electric buses, school buses. There's electric airplanes that are coming, very cool stuff. Electric boats, this is really lovely. I just built one of those last summer, and it is great. It's a totally different experience when you can just enjoy the lakes without the noise, the smell, and the rainbow trail that you have been leaving back. So that's that. You might already see some of the Amazon trucks being electric. I've seen a couple already. They're coming right now. Then all your home equipment that are small engines, definitely time to electrify those because the two-stroke motors that are used in those are extremely polluting. It's just nutty how polluting they are. And they're not good for environment, they're not also good for you when you're using them. They're very, very bad. And then like ATVs and everything. My brother has had electric ATV in his farm for 5 years, loves it. Just the best thing for farm use. So that's that. It's time for Q&As. All right. Let's start here.
Talk a little bit if you've got solar panels on the roof, how that changes the charging picture, or does it?
Well, I usually say that when you put the solar panels in the roof, you do a grid connection there. So you can use the electricity when they are producing more. You can try to use more during the daytime, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just best way to charge usually cars is to charge them overnight, because at that time there's plenty of grid power available, whereas your solar panels are producing electricity during the daytime when there's much more need in a grid for electricity. So if you have some extra that goes into your neighbor's use, that's fine. So I usually don't. I have solar panels and I have EV charging, I don't usually do it too much in that way, because I know that in the nighttime, plenty of electricity in grid, and in the daytime, the grid can handle it.
You didn't bother putting in a battery wall or anything?
I actually have that. I have batteries too. I don't have a picture here, but anyways, I have all kinds of fun things in my garage. Does it make any sense? No, it doesn't. But it's really a fun science project, so that's what it is. And then I can tell the utility companies how the whole system works. But I wouldn't say that, hey, batteries make only sense right now at homes if you don't have a very good service, electricity service. If you have a lot of outages, then the batteries start to make sense. If you, like me, live in Highland Park, St. Paul, and you get outages like once every 10 years, batteries don't do you anything. They help the grid. They are kind of like a shock absorber for the grid. So Excel Energy is happy that I have batteries in my house. It doesn't help me at all. But fun science project, excellent science project. So that's that. All right.
Can you talk briefly about the life expectancy of batteries and replacement costs?
Okay, so we're talking about the batteries and the life expectancy of the batteries and replacement cost. So all the vehicles have 8 years and 100,000 mile warranty on them. So that's the basic, at least, that you can expect the batteries to last. Then if I tell about my cars, for example, the one that I'm selling is 9 years old and it has already 100,000 miles on it. The one that I bought to replace that is 8 years old, it has 130,000 miles on it, and I'm not concerned about that at all. So based on what I'm seeing right now, batteries easily last 15, 16, 17 years, something like that. So that's okay. Some of the earlier ones, like Nissan Leafs, the first models of those first generation, they have seen a faster degradation, but good news is that you can actually measure it. But for example, Tesla batteries, like the car that I'm selling, sits in 90%, and it has 100,000 miles on it already. So it's pretty amazing how well they last. And then of course, what happens, let's say that in 16 years, the battery has dropped to 70% of the original capacity. And you are like, all right, well now I should upgrade it to some of the new one that maybe has even longer range because the battery technology has improved. So for that old battery that used to have 75 kilowatt hours of energy, now it has only 55 kilowatt hours of energy. 55 kilowatt hours of energy capacity is really valuable piece if you think about it. I have these home storage batteries in my garage. They are 18 kilowatt hours of storage capacity. I paid $13,000 just for those a few years ago. And I think maybe you can get them for $10,000 nowadays. But if you have 55 kilowatt hour energy capacity in your battery, if you would do the math there, you would think, oh, that's worth 30,000, that used battery there right away. Well, in kind of ways it is in that way. So there's a really good uses for the battery afterwards. I don't think that you can get 30,000 for it, but it's kind of funny how valuable that battery still is in secondary uses. So it'll be used either in a home storage or in a grid storage for maybe another 15 years. So the batteries have easily 30-year life cycle, and then they can be recycled, and they for sure will be recycled because they are so full of very valuable materials. So that's roughly the life cycle of the batteries. Right now, the new battery prices for that 17. So like if you have a Tesla Model 3 that has about 75 kilowatt hour battery pack, a new battery replacement for that would cost $12,000. Of course, you don't have to do that because it's still under warranty for a long time, but if there's some kind of accident that you have to replace because of that, insurance company would pay that. So that's roughly that, but what is it 8 years from now? Much less. So that's how it is. All right? Yes?
What happened to the idea that they were going to put in stations from Canada to Iowa on 94 and from on 34, no, the other way around. Canada to Iowa on 35 and 94 across from Wisconsin to North Dakota.
So the fast charging stations. Yeah, they have been putting those on. Tesla, of course, has a very good coverage already in all of those. So that has already happened. But NEVI funding, that was announced at the end of last year, and I think the application had to be in the beginning of this month. and they'll be starting to installations probably later this year. So there'll be more and more charging stations exactly on those routes. So that's what's happening with it. NEVI funding is a federal funding that was provided by federal government to build exactly these long distance driving. And they did a good job because they set up a basic idea that you have to provide, for all of these sites, you have to provide at least four plugs. Every one of them have to be able to charge 150 kilowatt level simultaneously. So they kind of put the basic of what does the DC fast charging need to look like in the future. And I think that was a good move. It took them a little while, but now we are there. They are starting to be installing those, so they're coming. Yes?
I've read some articles that have claimed that they'll have the cold weather battery problem figured out by 2025. Is that?
For me, there really isn't a cold weather battery problem anymore because of the range is so long. So I was just watching, there was a funny in Finland. If you drive from Finland south to north, it's like 800 miles, something like that. And they did a competition between big SUV. It was actually American make, some Chevy SUV that they were driving. Just really good gas guzzler. One team was driving that, and the other team was driving a new Kia EV9 that is also a big SUV electric vehicle. And they were seeing how does that work in a cold winter temperature. I think it was -20 or something like that, the temperature they were doing that. It was really funny because the other group cheated a little bit. They started earlier than the others. They were starting early, and they really fun thing to watch. It's a bummer that it's in Finnish. It's very enjoyable. Anyways, they ended up north in Lapland at the evening of that full long day, and it turned out that driving EV, all that distance was 1 hour 40 minutes longer when you look at it. But truthfully, for that kind of a trip, you should take a couple of breaks there anyways, so it didn't make. So there's not a huge difference anymore in that way. But of course, there's new technologies coming all the time. Things are getting better, but I'm not expecting any kind of a huge changes. What we have seen in the past has been a gradual improvement every year for the range and for the battery technology, and that's what I'm expecting to continue forward.
Is there a difference because of charging time?
Charging time, yeah, that's probably the biggest difference. And this was not a scientific comparison, so who knows how the gas gasoline guys sometimes drove, how fast they went and everything, so I wouldn't use that way. But again, the difference was not very big when you think about the whole days of driving. All right, back there.
What are insurance rates comparable?
Insurance rates, based on what I've seen, not too much different. Of course, you always have to do a good comparisons between the different. And some insurance companies are a little bit hesitant, like, I don't know, I've heard these Teslas are expensive and like doing that. But when you compare them with the different insurance companies, you always can find good rates. So shouldn't be a big issue. All right, yes?
Could you compare maintenance on an electric car to maintenance on a gasoline car?
Yes, I can. Let's go this one. No, where's my slide? Okay, I have to find it. I thought it was there ready, but my bad. It was earlier, but it was closed. There we go. What happened? There. All right. So, EVs, the maintenance there. So that's a Chevy Bolt there in the picture, 2017 Chevy Bolt. I'm sure it's very easy to read in the back row there what it says there. So maybe I should try to interpret what it says there. So once a year you have to change the compartment, inside compartment filter. I'm sorry, no. That's rotating the tires once a year. That's what you have to do. You have to rotate the tires once a year, like in any other car. Then you have to change the passenger compartment filter every 2 years. That takes about 15 minutes to do that. And you can do it yourself. It's not that complicated. You look at one YouTube video and I'm sure everybody can figure it out. Then every 5 years, you should replace the brake fluid in the car. And every 150,000 miles, you should replace the coolant in the car. And that's that. So usually what I say is that if you know how to put air in tires and replace the windshield wiper fluid, or add the windshield wiper fluid, you're pretty far already in the maintenance. You have to replace the windshield wipers sometimes, and you have to replace the tires when they wear out, but that's about it. So it's much simpler. You take a look at the comparable Chevy Cruze from the same year, and you have the traditional laundry list of items that make sure that you will stop at the dealership and spend some time there while they do the maintenance for your car. Huge difference there in that way, yes.
A quick question, you mentioned the coolant in the electric vehicle, is that for?
Oh, so coolant, the systems have coolant in there. First of all, many times the internal heating is done with still using coolant there. So there's a coolant that heats or the heater that heats the coolant, and then it brings that. But it also can collect the energy from inverters, and so that run the motor, or from the motor you have to cool the motor, or you can cool the battery pack. So there's some extra heat from all of those things, and then you can use that to heat up the inside, or in the summertime just dissipate that. That's where you need the coolant for in these cars. Other questions? I guess what? Last question.
Could you comment on the regenerative braking?
Yeah, so
Many vehicles have advantage.
yeah, all the EVs have regen braking. So what regen braking does is that the motor that is usually providing you the propulsion when you drive forward, when you take your foot from the accelerator pedal, it's not gas pedal anymore, it's accelerator pedal, just to get the terminology right here. When you do that, then the car starts to slow down, that motor does the slowing for you. So that's regen braking. So it's regens, and then it can put that energy back to the battery. Car still has the traditional mechanical brakes, but if you don't have to press the brake pedal too hard, you're not using the brake for that. So you're actually not losing the energy, because traditional mechanical brakes, when you brake those, you just lose that energy right away there, and you're wearing out your brake pads and your rotors there. But with EVs, much less need for that, because the motor does the heavy lifting for you, and also is more efficient because it can reuse that most of that energy there. It just hurts me nowadays. Being an automotive engineer, it has hurt me before, but even nowadays when you look at EVs and you look at some of the traditional internal combustion engine car coming really fast to the stop sign there or to the lights and then braking hard at the end. I'm like, what are you doing? You're just wearing out your brakes like nobody's business there. With EVs, that wouldn't be a problem, because it's just motor putting it back to the battery. So that's good. Yes?
There was an article in the paper not long ago about the tires not lasting as long like these.
Yeah, EVs up maybe 10 to 20% more, way more, 10 to 20% more. So you can expect the tire life expectancy to be 10 to 20% lower. That's the thing. Of course, people are like, oh, they are heavier, they use a lot of it. It's not that big of a difference. It's directly related to the weight of the vehicles. Of course, I'll take it back. Of course, if you are using that 3.2 seconds 0 to 60 acceleration every time you leave, your tire expenses are going through the roof. There's no question about it. I had one of my friends who said that he had to put his car had this nice power meter there that shows how much power you're using when you accelerate. So he put a couple of arrows there for his wife to show what the tire costs are if you're accelerating with this power or if you're accelerating with this power. Just to kind of remind them that, like, anytime you use that much power, we're starting to lose the traction and use excess wear on the tires. All right. Yes.
Going back to the regenerative braking, right now when you're in manual transmission, we're typically downshift.
Mm-hmm.
Is regenerative braking similar in terms of energy conservation to downshifting?
Yeah. So in downshifting, what you're using, they're using the compression in the cylinders to slow down the car, but you're not getting any of the energy back.
Right.
That's the difference. So the feeling would be similar, but in this time, actually, the energy will be saved, and you can use it in your next acceleration.
I was thinking in terms of specifically of brake wear.
Well, yeah, you can save some brake wear with that way, but engine braking is also a little bit more limited, and you always have to pay attention to doing it and all of that. So with EVs, you just drive. It's kind of, you don't have to think, you just drive, and it does it for you. So that's the thing. All right, excellent. I think we are starting to run out of time here. I don't want to take us. Was it 8 o'clock we were supposed to end? So definitely check out outside all the vehicles we have there. Talk with all the owners. If you have more questions, I'll be around there too and can answer those. And of course, just tell me how much more than $22,500 you want to pay for my car there too. So happy to do that. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, so thanks everybody. Thank you, Yuka, again. Great presentation. So we have 5 electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids out in the parking lot if people want to check them out. We've got a Tesla Model 3, a Jeep Wrangler, a Chevy Bolt, and a Kia Niro. And then, of course, Yuka's Tesla. He's trying to sell the Model S. So, yeah, feel free to stick around, ask questions. We've got some flyers over there, like additional information. And I want to shout out, we also have 2 of our sustainability commissioners here, Diane and Ashley, so feel free to talk with them too. So, yeah.